I'm Andrew Greenspan, Vice President in Corporate Sustainability at HSBC Bank USA. Primarily oversee activities related to sustainability risk, sustainable operations, climate change education for employees. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my experience with the conference plenary today. Climate change. We know it's a huge systems problem, right? Our present state has been shaped by a mix of history, policy, economics, and earth and life sciences, and it's difficult for a company to assess the impact of its strategic decisions in the context of such complexity. And the question I grapple with for my seat in corporate sustainability is, how do I help my colleagues, in asset management and credit risk and procurement, understand this complexity? How can I engage with them on their terms in this topic in a way that's meaningful for them in their role? For senior managers, how can I cultivate leadership towards action on this topic? I'm going to present to you today sort of how I've responded to this challenge using system dynamics modeling and systems thinking. We found an exceptional partner and tool that's proven absolutely instrumental for this cause, and they're the folks at Climate Interactive and their En-ROADS model, which we'll be using in a moment to demonstrate this range of applications for the corporate world for system dynamics modeling and systems thinking. But before we do that, I want to spend a minute on why this particular model has proven so effective. I've seen the core model on which En-ROADS is based. It's not something I can readily use with colleagues. So speaking now directly to the system dynamics modelers in the audience, one day you'll take this model that you spent so much time and energy working on, and you'll give it to someone like me. And if you want your model to be used, if you want the outputs to resonate with decision makers, I just want to share a few of the characteristics of En-ROADS that make the experience with the model so effective. And this is by no means all of them. But first, it enables the creation of a vision. Employees can develop their own alternative to the very scary climate trajectory that we're on. They can get hopeful about it. They can get excited about it. And they can think about what they can do to bring it about through their roles. Second, explore the impact of what we're doing through a grounding in science. Establish that connectivity. Show us that what we're doing matters for the climate, for social equity, and again, in a way where we understand the effect on the climate and why. As a bank, where are our leverage points? What are the small things that we can do that can have a significant impact? And how can we amplify that impact through our actions? Third, En-ROADS is highly collaborative. Right? Give us a model that encourages a collaborative learning experience. Build something that's interactive, that can pull people in across disciplines, that can encourage us to challenge ourselves, challenge each other. The sessions where we give the model to participants, literally, we let them work in small groups on their laptops. They develop their own scenario in small groups. That's when the tool is the most powerful. They don't want to be lectured at about climate science. They want to get their hands on it. They want to explore and learn for themselves. These are three features, again, not the only, but three features of En-ROADS that have made my experience really effective. Okay, objectives. For the rest of the call, I want to talk through how I've benefited from the model's capabilities by demonstrating the range of uses of the model. And I've used each of these in the workshop settings that I've facilitated. And we'll be moving fairly briskly through these 8. So I do want to get started, and let's jump over to En-ROADS. So here's our En-ROADS interface. Beautiful, user-friendly interface. On the left here, we have the energy mix. Expected demand for energy through the end of the century. The dark brown line is coal. Cheap, plentiful, we burn it, move it around easily. We expect an upward trajectory. That's as the red line, oil, will bend at some point in the back half of the century, perhaps sooner. The dark blue line is gas. Green is the slow but steady uptick in renewables. Light blue is nuclear. The orange line is the as yet undeveloped alternative to a carbon-based energy source, hence it's flat. Correlating with the energy mix is the greenhouse gas concentration in the atmosphere and the different sources of greenhouse gases. And correlating further, we know that we're headed for 4.1 degrees over pre-industrial times. En-ROADS affords us the opportunity to do something about this, right? To create our own 2-degree scenario to drive this temperature increase down to 2 degrees by using 18 different policies at our disposal. And just to show off the model's basic functionality, we can affect the energy supply. We can tax coal by sliding this lever here and assess the impact on the energy mix. Obviously, the coal line bottoms out. Gas will bump a bit, as will renewables, replacing some of that demand. greenhouse gas concentration comes way down. And we know that keeping coal in the ground is an important strategy over the next 10 years. And further, we've gained 0.3 degrees on temperature. So with a very simplified sliding of a lever, we've enacted a policy that has great effect on temperature. There are several others at our disposal. We can subsidize renewables. We can accelerate the trends of electrification in the transport sector, right? We have other industry-specific interventions. We can improve our energy efficiency in buildings. We can reduce the amount of emissions from deforestation. We can address those other greenhouse gases, all the while exploring our progress as we drive this down to 2 degrees using the policy levers at our disposal. Now, En-ROADS uses the latest and greatest data from the International Energy Agency, the IPCC. It's based on sound assumptions and, of course, the system dynamics modeling behind the curtain, where every time we move one of these sliders, the software calculates 14,000 equations and shows us the results almost immediately. I'm going to show off some of the basic capabilities of the model through these sorts of simplified demos with more of a focus on relaying my experience with it, the relevance to our company. Because on the schedule for later this week, an important plug, Thursday at 10:30 a.m. New York time, you can experience the full climate action simulation and En-ROADS training by the professionals by participating in that workshop. I encourage you all to do it. It's an exceptional learning experience. Okay, so let's look at our different use cases. First, improve employee ability to speak climate. What do I mean by that? So when we invited Climate Interactive to come facilitate a workshop over 2 years ago now, we saw the incredibly strong connectivity between the bank's sustainability strategy and what can be tested in the model. So we developed our own HSBC version of Climate Interactive's workshop offering where employees would brainstorm the bank's sustainability commitments and then ask the question through the model, what would be the possible effect of the rest of the world following our lead? And so here's an example of one scenario one group came up with. It includes several of the key HSBC commitments around financing and risk, and it asks what the effect would be if the rest of the world followed the bank's lead. For example, we are RE100 or Renewable Energy 100 members, meaning we're committed to buying 100% of our energy from renewable sources by 2030. We're also leaders in the financing of renewable energy project finance in North America. So we're driving the renewables agenda on multiple fronts. So we have a significant subsidy for renewables to reflect our commitment. Elsewhere, we have an energy policy that has us out of the coal financing game. So this group established a very high tax on coal as representative of that. We have policies that dictate how we can lend into environmentally sensitive sectors. And anything that results in deforestation is restricted and prohibited at the utmost. So we have a significant reduction in emissions from deforestation. So this group got to 2 degrees. They understood how, they understood the relevance and connectivity to strategy. At the time, our global head of corporate sustainability, he wanted to improve employees' ability to speak climate. And this has achieved that. This has really achieved that. It's the rare experience where everybody's locked in, they're interested in what they're learning, they're not tinkering on their BlackBerry, and that's always been the case when I run these sessions. Okay, second application, influencing the C-suite. That sounds exciting, sounds important. Before we jump over, we like to bring together senior decision makers and share this experience in the hopes of exerting influence from our perch in corporate sustainability, right? And this is a great way to raise the stature of the function and work to embed sustainable thinking in the business. I like to ask, what might a 2-degree world look like? Just kind of put that out there and then get out of the way and let these senior managers learn for themselves. I delivered a session to our Continental Europe Executive Committee, and I was looking forward to seeing where 2 members of our C-suite were working together, hunkered over En-ROADS, where they were with their scenario after about 20 minutes. This is where they were after 20 minutes. They had reached agreement on carbon price. That's about it. They'd reached agreement on a $75 a ton carbon price, spending the whole time getting granular and debating the merits and details of different carbon price strategies. When would they phase it in? How long would it take to reach the maximum target? And this was great. This is about testing assumptions, about challenging each other's thinking, And multiple views are, of course, welcome. I loved this experience from senior managers. Similarly, and more recently, in New York, I did a session with our chief operating officer and her executive committee. And very early on, knowing that we have an energy efficiency target, I asked her to mentally model what she thought the effect of a tripling in the annual rate of energy efficiency in our buildings would have. And when we slid the lever over here, as you see, tripling of annual energy efficiency, we saw that we need less of everything. Wow, fossil fuels really stay in the ground. And we gained almost half a degree of temperature. And there was this sort of virtual moment where our chief operating officer looked at our head of corporate real estate and had this sort of shared and newfound understanding of how important our energy efficiency targets are. In 10 seconds, they had this incredible grasp of the importance of energy efficiency in buildings. Okay, third case, demonstrate industry thought leadership. At HSBC, we want to be seen not just as providers of the financing for the transition to low carbon, but as drivers of the conversation, builders of knowledge in the industry. This past February, when we could still travel, I was in Phoenix supporting Climate Interactive at GreenBiz, which is the industry conference for sustainability professionals. And our workshop was the #1 rated event of 111. And that's going to sell the value of the tool better than anything else I can say here, most likely. Also, last year at the World Energy Congress in Abu Dhabi, I facilitated a game version of this workshop where 150 energy professionals grouped into negotiating blocks: conventional energy, clean energy, land and ag, consortium of foreign governments, even environmental justice hawks. And they negotiated a 2-degree world. This is the world that they negotiated over the course of 3 hours. These levers moved back and forth over the session as they challenged each other's policies, and as the vested interests and the real negotiating positions were forcefully shown. And they got to 2 degrees. And I'll say the only time people line up to speak with me after a presentation is when I do an En-ROADS workshop. And in this case, they were energy professionals from all over the world, some of whom I continue to speak with and engage and advance the conversation. Okay, fourth use case, collaboration with clients. This is a nice one and a fairly recent one. Back to that GreenBiz experience. There were clients of the bank in the audience at our session. A few have been interested in doing what we did, which is tailoring the climate action workshop for their own experience and repurposing it to take it internally at their organizations. So we helped them do that, sharing our experience. And with one food and beverage client, we've actually now co-facilitated 5 sessions with them, where we really were able to explore and see what's possible if these 2 large companies work together with shared values. And this right here, this is a scenario from one of their workshops, which is their sustainability commitments implemented at scale. Food and beverage company, they're looking at the issues of deforestation. They've got a more direct ability to impact the situation with methane and nitrous oxide through industry, through agricultural processes. They looked at energy efficiency and transport. They were big supporters of renewable energy. Very interesting, right? It's a different portfolio of solutions delivered in a shared values context with their bank. Very, very cool experience. 5th use case, explore societal trends. This is interesting. Sometimes participants really want to understand, what does a world powered solely by clean energy look like? Or what would be the impact of the whole world eating less meat? At a session I did in Düsseldorf in Germany, I used the model to explore the implementation of a circular economy. A woman who works in procurement told me she didn't really have an understanding of the connectivity between circular economy and mitigating climate change. She knows what circular economy is. She didn't have a strong sense of the connectivity. So I showed her. In 30 seconds, I was able to provide this sort of explanation to her visually. If you successfully implement a circular economy globally at scale, you're talking about a lot less oil for virgin plastics manufacturing by mid-century, where much of the demand for oil is expected to come from. You're talking about much less emission of methane due to less landfilling, because we're not taking, making, and wasting under a linear structure. We're keeping materials in flow, we're reusing. Less deforestation, right? Less need to mine the world for resources. So again, a very efficient, effective way to respond to that question or that challenge that this employee was having. Other employees have been interested in this trend towards plant-based diets, right? Here's another example. What might the world look like if we shift towards eating more plant-based diets? Here's a potential scenario. You're talking about, again, far less methane emission due to raising livestock and the demands on our land. Similar with deforestation. You're looking at an increase in energy efficiency, less refrigerated trucking around the country. So another interesting case where, very quickly using the model's capabilities, and there's a little bit of freedom you have to take and leniency with the model, always careful to explain how you're using it, but it can inform the thinking. It can give them a way to sort of grapple with their question. Sixth application. This one's a little bit more technical. The risk management application. You can use the model to inform your thinking and set an understanding of, sort of level set an understanding of the climate system when you do your scenario analysis development. Highly technical stuff, right? But En-ROADS is much more accessible and user-friendly than integrated assessment models and shared socioeconomic pathways. And so this scenario right here is an attempt at doing that. This sort of surmises that, this is one temperature pathway where countries take globally coordinated action post-2030. They realize that what we committed to through the Paris Agreement is inadequate. We need to make drastic emissions reductions globally coordinated immediately in 2030. So you see the fall off of fossil fuels. And this is one portfolio of policies that might be characteristic of a 2, or in this case, a 2.5 degree pathway. And a company can ask themselves, what might be the impact to our business of this temperature pathway, this given scenario? A technical use that En-ROADS can have a role in. These last 2 use cases have come about quite recently, and they've proven to be among the most effective. First, how might the world respond to the COVID-19 pandemic? What might a climate-friendly set of government stimulus packages look like? What habits have we developed as consumers that might be maintained? And so let's take a look. Here's what one group came up with, one scenario based on audience input on how we might come out of the crisis in a way that's friendly to the environment, right? We're gonna incentivize renewables. We're gonna continue to work from home a lot, being more energy efficient in our corporate offices. We're gonna look at the pedestrianization of cities, right? We're gonna walk and cycle more. We're not gonna subsidize fossil fuels. If we need to buy a car, we're gonna buy an electric vehicle. Just an example of, the ideas that employees came up with when we thought about how we might respond to COVID. We know that fear is not a good starting point for creativity. This post-COVID theme sort of provides a hopeful starting point, an open-mindedness about what's possible, and then it lets the participants experience success. Finally, I want to touch on what Climate Interactive refers to as multi-solving, understanding the intersection of climate, health, and equity. This is highly topical as well, and this recent use might be one of our best. I did a session on this theme with our employee resource groups, which are known as sort of our affinity groups. This is about culture, and this is about action. It's about addressing the climate crisis while also addressing social injustice. And this session here probably has more active participation than any others that I've done. And in this example here, here's a social equity focused scenario, right? Where employees wanted to come up with those multi-solving co-benefit solutions. We don't want coal-fired power plants in low to moderate income communities. If we're going to incentivize electrification, will lower income communities be able to afford them? Will they have access to charging infrastructure? Will the charging stations be in their neighborhood? Just for a couple of examples. With this one, it's very easy to find and capitalize on that moment when the conversation deepens, because this is a deep topic, right? We end up talking about what really matters and what matters to the participants. So I think that about wraps up what I wanted to do. I really hope I've succeeded in conveying the many amazing uses we've had for the model, and that I've given the modelers in the audience something to think about, perhaps as a challenge for how to create the next En-ROADS, how to create the next system dynamics model that is of great use and benefit to the corporate community. So I'll end with one final plug for the full session, Thursday, 10:30 a.m. New York time, the Climate Action Simulation. Please do join that workshop. And thank you very much